Today I'm going to be building a NAS for my fire safe. And when I say fire safe, I mean instead of the old method of me taking hard drives and putting them into my fire safe for safekeeping for offline backup, this is going to be an offline NAS. And the reason why it's going to be a full-on NAS is simply because I have so much data that moving a whole bunch of drives around into a fire safe just to be pulled out again in a month or whenever I need to do a backup is not very practical. I've switched to using a full-on NAS that I just take out of the fire safe, plug in, run a backup, and update all the data, and then unplug it and put it into the fire safe for safekeeping. On my first edit of this video, it wasn't super clear that I was going to shut the NAS off and put it into the safe for offline storage, as opposed to people thinking I'm running a NAS inside of a fire safe, which is not what I'm doing. I just pull this out, backup, put it back. It's just a lot easier than 8 hard drives loose that I'd have to hook up into a full array of storage and run a backup on. Another option instead of a full NAS is to use a case and put in a whole bunch of hard drives and then use a SAS expander, one of those internal to external adapters, and then a SAS cable to a SAS controller on your NAS, and you can basically use this as a big external hard drive, and that would work just as well. And it would also be, it would definitely be cheaper. It wouldn't be outrageously cheap depending on what kind of hardware you're using in here. Because this isn't super high performance, or it doesn't need to be, you can use basically any motherboard you want, so it doesn't really matter. In this case, I'm using 10 gig Ethernet. If you had the direct connection, you'd have more speed, which I may do in the future. I may take the motherboard out of this and convert it into a big external one. I haven't really decided yet. It'll probably stay this way until I need the motherboard from in here for some other project, then I'll swap it. But in the meantime, this is definitely a lot better than pulling out a whole bunch of hard drives and backing up and then putting them all back in. It was getting cumbersome when I had like 4 drives. To think of having to do it with 8 is kind of a nightmare. Fitting a NAS into this is quite difficult, so tracking down exactly the best size case you can get that'll still fit in it. Eventually I found exactly what I needed, and I really mean exactly. It like fits perfectly. It's always a trade-off of size versus how many drive bays you can get. Now, I am aware you can buy NASs that are specifically designed to survive a fire. They have effectively a fire safe built around them, but they're usually really expensive and they're like older. So what I've done is measured the internal volume and tried to figure out exactly what will fit in here. Now, this could actually get a little bit bigger, but I don't think I could ever find a case that had more than 8 drives that would fit in here. As you can see, I picked the Johnsmo N3 case. It fits exactly in this model. I will link it in the description so you can get the exact fire safe if you want. In this case, with the Johnsmo N3, I get 8 3.5-inch drive bays, an ITX motherboard, and whatever else I can fit in there. I know there's some people getting ready to type that this isn't a real safe. You can get into this with some kitchen shears and it's not a real safe. I know that. They call it a fire safe. I'm calling it a fire safe. I understand it's not a keep burglars out safe. It is just designed to keep this thing from melting in a fire. I used to run a Johnsmo N2. That only has 5 drives, and since I discovered I can fit 8 drives in there, I thought I should upgrade. Originally, I was using this very weird ASRock ITX board that has an AM4 socket for AMD and takes Intel coolers, but has Thunderbolt, and I was able to use that combined with this Thunderbolt 10 gig adapter to manage to get a SAS controller and 10 gig Ethernet. However, one, I've switched to mostly using SFP connectors for my 10 gig, and better options have come around. This board is a very cheap Phantom Gaming, again, ASRock AM4 board, and it supports basically nothing fancy. It has 2 M.2 slots, which is a requirement for me because I need one to boot off of, and I'm going to be using this to provide my 10 gig Ethernet. These awesome little M.2 to 10 gig Ethernet adapters are great, and they're only $35 or something on AliExpress. So this just takes up a PCI Express slot, but the actual connection comes from this little adapter that sticks into an M.2 slot. Luckily, the Johnswell N3 case comes with 2 PCI Express slot covers because they expect you to use a video card sometimes. And I'm just going to use one for the HBA and one for this one just floating. And that'll give me my hard drives and my 10 gig Ethernet. For the rest of the hardware, I'm using 2 very slow by today's standards DDR4 2666 16 gig ECC sticks. And this is a Ryzen Pro 5 5650G. Keep in mind, if you want ECC memory with a G series CPU, or APU, whatever you want to call it, you need to get the Pro version. This is the final form, more or less, of this thing. I've installed the drives, swapped out the fans, whole bunch of stuff I'll go over because I needed to make a couple tweaks. One is that with 8 16 terabyte 7200 RPM drives, the fans that come with this thing just cannot keep up with it. As expected, because they're little 100 millimeter fans and they're pretty low speed. So I've replaced them with slightly faster ones, and they seem to have higher static pressure, so they can at least keep it under 45 degrees Celsius in a moderately warm room, which is insane. I ended up going with the AMD stock cooler because I could not for the life of me get a cooler to fit properly or to mount. Like I had a bunch of coolers and they were either missing the correct bracket or whatever. So I mean, that's not their fault, but it's just like I couldn't find anything. So I was back to the AMD stock cooler, and with the stock cooler in, I can just barely wedge in this little Noctua fan to just blow down on the HBA and the 10 gig card. Works perfectly. This is all cable rat's nest. Doesn't matter. Other than that, I threw in some Noctuas here just to get some more airflow. Why not? I mean, I don't think I really need them as long as there's airflow on these. Everything else should be fine with just the stock cooler running. Around back, it's fans. really mostly just fans. Thermal take fans that I've got installed here. They make kind of a weird kind of variance in their sound, like while they're running. It's kind of like a and it drives me nuts, but whatever, it's mostly working. And again, this lives in my fire safe. I'm not taking it out very often. Backing up to this thing over the 10 gig, easily maintained 7 to 8 gigabit transfers the entire way. And I don't mean like, oh, it cached it for a little bit. It was going hundreds of megabytes a second writing to the drives and then ran out of cache. I mean, it did it for 2 days. No problem. Hard drive to hard drive transfer over the 10 gig connection. Contained hundreds and hundreds of megabytes a second. Filled up half of the storage space with my entire backup. And it's ready to go back into the fire safe. I have to double check the dimensions, but I think I'm going to put a bunch of these felt furniture pads on one side so that I can slide it into the fire safe a little easier.